Hello there, Harry Potter fans. Welcome back to the page. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are with Chapter 37, Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Chapter 37, Out of Control. Chapter text. We aren't going to call it that, Harry said for the fourth time. We can call it something like Tom Riddle is a total arsehole watch. He did not like the way everyone in Sirius' office rolled their eyes. Even Professor McGonagall did. I'm serious, he insisted. Instead of agreeing with him, Sirius patted him on the shoulder and thrust a glass of fire whiskey in his hand. It was the Friday night after the battle in the Muggle village, and they were preparing to broadcast the very first real bit of news to the public. Thank you for the great idea, Professor Flitwick, Ginny said admiringly. It was perfect. Yeah, Ron said. We weren't sure how we were going to manage to take over the WWN. This is even better. Anything to help, Flitwick squeaked. Harry agreed with Ron and Ginny in that Professor Flitwick was a genius. Even Dumbledore had not thought of charming, innocuous-looking items outside wizarding establishments to broadcast what Harry liked to call, though no one else did, Riddle Watch. Everyone in St. Mungo's, the Leaky Cauldron, and the rest of Diagon Alley, Hogsmeade, Hogwarts, and the Ministry of Magic would be able to hear what Harry had to say. Not to mention that if the Ministry, or Voldemort, wished to silence the broadcast, they would have a damn hard time of it. Dumbledore had hidden the items himself. Harry was particularly pleased about the one they had planted near Malfoy Manor. He's going to be so angry, Ron said blissfully. I can just see him stomping up and down, throwing a tantrum like a 3-year-old. I don't think you should drink anymore, Ron, Hermione said. You don't want to be drunk for this. Yeah, I do, Ron said, grinning. It'll be even better. You'll deviate from the script. Hermione said. That's likely, Harry said. But he was just as likely to even without the alcohol. You don't worry your head about it, Ron told her. Just keep drinking your mead, and everything will be fine. She huffed, but looked amused despite herself. Harry was feeling pleasantly warm and comfortable by the time they were about to begin the first broadcast. Remember the last time we got this tipsy? He grinned at Ginny. You mean when we were planning out how to kill Umbridge and my parents walked in? Ginny smiled ruefully. She said it quietly enough that those who did not know the secret behind Dolores Umbridge's mysterious disappearance, Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick, could not overhear. As far as Harry was concerned, what had happened in Umbridge's office would stay in Umbridge's office. Yeah, Harry said, but I was thinking more about the sex that happened afterward. Oi, Ron said. 30 seconds. 10 minutes later, Harry sat back feeling both annoyed and elated. Elation won. That was great, he said. But don't think I haven't forgotten your betrayal, Ron. Ron wiped his eyes. Hold on, I'm still loving that I actually said that Voldemort has daddy issues. Don't ruin one of the best moments of my life. He was quite right to call it Potter Watch, I think, Professor McGonagall said. Whether you want it to be so or not, the wizarding world is looking to you. It'll help rally the troops, as it were. Harry responded by refilling his glass and tipping it into his mouth. He ignored her frozen look of disapproval. Don't look like that, Minerva, Sirius grinned. Let the kids have a bit of fun, I suppose, she said doubtfully. She didn't say another word about the drinking all night, even when Ron had to lean heavily on Hermione to make it out the door. Harry rather thought that behind her disapproval, she understood the need to let loose. His opinion of her, rather high to begin with, rose even further. Harry awoke the next day feeling slightly groggy and a little bit hungover, though he had felt plenty worse before. I've got to stop letting Sirius talk me into drinking, he thought, though he knew that he wouldn't. He smirked when he remembered Potter Watch. He almost wished that Voldemort was not now employing a clemency against him. He would have liked to be there firsthand to witness his reaction. Yawning, he opened the curtains around his bed. How's your head, Ron? No reply. His brow furrowed. Ron's bed looked tumbled and messy, but Ron was not in it. He drank a hell of a lot more than I did last night. Where is he? Ron isn't here, Neville said weakly. He was sitting on the edge of his bed and held his head in his hands. Dean and Seamus went to breakfast. Ron might have gone with them. Harry glanced down at his watch. It was 9:30 on a Saturday morning. It was not like Ron to be up and about so early, even if they hadn't been drinking the night before. He's probably with Hermione, he thought. He winced when he moved too suddenly and his stomach rolled. Then he felt a flash of relief when he saw what sat on the bedside table. Someone's left us a hangover remedy, Neville, Harry said. He tipped the potion into his mouth and swallowed gratefully. At the same moment, there was a flash of light, and swirling silver mist resolved itself into a weasel. Hogsheaded. Now, it said with Mr. Weasley's voice. Harry's first thought was that it was alarmingly risky for the man to contact him in this fashion. He could have been anywhere. Anyone could have heard. But in the next moment, he was running out of the room, Neville hot on his heels. Mr. Weasley was not stupid. Harry had never known him to take such a risk before. Suddenly, Ron's absence seemed ominous rather than confusing. Had something happened to him? Or worse, to Ginny? Where's Ginny? He barked to a fifth-year girl who sat in the common room. She's sleeping, the girl said. It was hard for Harry to believe that she was Ginny's age. She seemed quite young and stupid. He did not pause to collect her. He did not know who else was in the room with her, and did not want to send his Patronus with a message that might sound suspicious. He and Neville thundered down the corridor, threw open the door to the room of requirement, and raced down to Ariana's portrait. Mr. Weasley, Bill, and Charlie were waiting for him. The moment Harry saw their faces, he knew that something dreadful had happened. That kind of agony and rage could only come from one thing. His heart hammered in his chest, and Harry wondered if this was the moment that he became Merlin. Who? Percy. There was a rushing sound in Harry's ears, and the words always and always thundered through his very veins. A rage so pure and fierce overcame him that Harry felt a satisfying clarity of purpose. Vengeance. The thought was sweet and the way forward clear. Still, he had to ask, how? He was taken from the ministry, Charlie said fiercely. We knew he shouldn't have gone back to work. Don't blame Percy for this, Bill said in an ugly voice. Dad said that a Death Eater, Rothfuss, grabbed him and disapparated. Are you certain he's dead? Harry asked. He felt very calm, and he seemed not to need to take as many breaths as normal. His body was turned into an imperious, Mr. Weasley said. Harry eyed him. For once, the older man made eye contact with him, and Harry saw what he was feeling echoed back to him. They removed his clothes and forced him to walk through the atrium and the ministry. His voice shook and his eyes filled with tears of grief and fury, cut a message into him. It was supposed to be a warning not to side with you. I don't know if they did it while he was alive or not. Had Harry not been detached from his body with a fury so intense that Harry felt like he was burning, he might have shown a physical reaction to the news. He blew out a deep breath. Where is Rodolphus Lestrange? Is he still alive? He is still impersonating Tad Wainwright, Mr. Weasley said. Are you? Whatever you're planning, Charlie said. Whatever retaliation you're going to do, we want in on it. He was our brother. You can't just... Harry silenced him by transfiguring his face into something less recognizable. The nose flattened and the hair turned a burnished gold. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The others caught on, and the Weasleys and Neville disappeared, and anonymous strangers took their places. We need brooms, Harry said. Can't we just apparate? Neville asked. We know where he... We aren't going after Rodolphus, Harry said. I was making sure that he was still alive. Merlin, I wish I'd thought of this before. We don't need her. It was simply that Bellatrix was so intimidating. He felt almost safer using her body to break into Gringotts, and they'd always planned on allowing the second break out of Azkaban to happen. But they'd never thought that this might happen. The others exchanged confused looks. Harry noticed this as he started down the stairs. He almost wanted to meet up with a few Death Eaters down in Aberforth's pub. Percy is dead. His body was desecrated. Any Death Eaters Harry found today would die. As long as he kept killing, the grief would be pushed back. It was the first death this time around tore Harry up. Every time he blinked, he saw Percy jumping in front of a killing curse to save his mother. And then he saw Percy's naked body paraded at the ministry. We need brooms, Harry said to Aberforth. The pub was empty. Can we borrow them? Aberforth did not say a word, but provided enough brooms for all of them. They weren't firebolts, but Harry and the others were flying out to Azkaban, not playing Quidditch. Harry, still wrapped in an eerie silence, turned to the door. If any Death Eaters come in, keep them here. We'll be back for them. Harry, Neville said, what are we doing? Are we going to get Bellatrix Lestrange? Harry ignored him for the moment. Will you apparate us as close to Azkaban as we can get? Mr. Weasley gripped Harry's arm tightly, turned on the spot, and Harry opened his eyes to a lonely vision of the northern coast. It would have been beautiful had Harry been able to see it without the image of dead Percy superimposed over it. Harry was glad that he did not need to give a full explanation of what they were about. He did not intend on stopping at Bellatrix, however. At least the Dementors are gone, Bill said. Harry moved forward with purpose. They only had 4 obstacles standing in their way. 4 Aurors guarded the initial wards. Ever since the Dementors had left to serve Voldemort, Azkaban had been pathetically guarded. Harry and Dumbledore had allowed this, as they had thought he had needed Bellatrix, and now it worked to Harry's advantage. The 4 Aurors. 3. The first guard to the wards that surrounded Azkaban they encountered was Nymphadora Tonks. Harry, she whispered, once Harry had stepped close enough. She looked utterly flummoxed to see him. Obviously, the news about what had happened to Percy had not traveled here yet. Hi, Dora, he said lightly. I'm glad you're here. We're going to break into Azkaban. Why? They killed Percy, Harry said simply. Her mouth fell open, and her eyes filled. Oh no, she said. No. This works, Harry said. You can let us in the wards. I didn't particularly want to imperius anyone. I'm not very good at it, you see. He wondered if he would be able to pull off that curse now. The cold that suffused his limbs made him think that he just might be able to. Harry stood aside while Bill and Charlie stunned the other Aurors. Mr. Weasley's jaw worked, and Neville stared off into the distance, not really seeing. Let me kill her, Neville said. I want to do it. Neville, it was our... There are enough for all of us, Harry said. And Bellatrix tortured his parents into insanity. I want to watch him kill her. And he did. He realized that a small part of himself had wanted Neville to be the one to kill Bellatrix Lestrange ever since that Christmas on the closed ward so many years ago. Neville had died before he could kill her, though, last time, and it had been Molly Weasley who had killed her. But not this time. Charlie and Bill were staring at him, and Harry could not read their expressions. They weren't uncomfortable. I think I was wrong about him being fine with sacrificing Percy, Charlie said. Harry mounted his broom. I would have done this had any of you died the way Percy did, Harry thought. He did not say it out loud. The wards are down, Harry, Tonks called. Moments later, the 5 of them were racing toward the black speck in the distance that grew nearer and nearer with each passing second. The island fortress was a grim monolith that jutted out from the ocean like an ugly scar. The chill in Harry's bones ached, despite the fact that the Dementors were long gone. It permeated the walls and radiated out. The fortress prison was alive with the clamoring yells of prisoners, though as Harry followed Mr. Weasley to the high-security area, no guards were in sight. Perhaps the wards were enough to keep them contained, and the prisoners didn't have wands. It was only through luck that Sirius had been an animagus. Mr. Weasley blasted the door apart with more force than was strictly necessary. The wards were down, after all, but Harry's elated sense of purpose grew. It felt right, no matter that they were about to kill wandless people. But it wasn't murder, it was a public service. It was vengeance, and it prevented any of these Death Eaters from doing it again. Charlie grinned fiercely at him, and Harry returned it. Don't burn them, Harry said. We want Voldemort to recognize them. Mr. Weasley muttered something under his breath. Sorry, Harry said. Mr. Weasley met his eyes again. He was pale and sweating. He looked like Neville had when Umbridge had been using the Cruciatus Curse on Luna, furious and sick from it. They killed him, he said, murdered him, and then sent him back. I'll never. How in Merlin's name do you forget something like this? I've never been able to, Harry said. He heard scuttling and indistinct voices. He wondered if there was some sort of muffling charm placed around the separate cells. He would have thought that Bellatrix would be screeching at him. It isn't something that you can forget. But this, Percy won't have died in vain. I've found Bellatrix, Neville said in a strange voice. He had moved ahead and now stood in the shadows. Harry followed him. Bellatrix Lestrange looked dirty, unkempt, and completely insane. She stood a foot back from iridescent bars and was obviously screaming at them. "Hey, Bella," Harry said. "How do you like being back in Azkaban? I'm sorry that all the Dementors have fled. You know, you're one of the few people who are actually improved by Dementors." Neville took his cue and relaxed a little. Harry watched as his friend's face hardened even further. The last of childhood fled Neville's features as he stared at the woman, the monster who had stolen away his parents. He raised his wand and whispered, "Crucio." Bellatrix fell back, writhing and screaming silently. Mr. Weasley muttered a spell, and then Harry could actually hear the screaming. She stopped abruptly and, panting, got to her feet. Neville looked shaken. Harry put a hand on his shoulder. I don't think I can do it this way," Neville said. The skin around his lips was white. "Do you want me to do it?" Harry asked quietly. "One sectum sempra, and she'll be dead." A ghost of a smile flitted across Neville's face. "Oh no, I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. I just don't think I can use the Cruciatus curse." "Filthy, blood traitor," Bellatrix panted. She leaned up against the wall. "Did you enjoy it?" Neville asked her. "Did you enjoy torturing my mom and dad and whoever else?" She tossed her long hair out of her face and gave him a heavy-lidded stare. "I always enjoyed it." Harry could tell by the look in her eyes that she knew she was going to die and wanted to go out defiant. "Pretoria," Neville said. The Death Eater screeched and fell to the ground. Her kneecap became suddenly unrecognizable. The bones had been shattered. "I would have done it quickly if you'd lied," Neville told her. Harry, Mr. Weasley, Bill, and Charlie watched, completely silent, as Neville broke nearly every bone in Bellatrix's body. At one point, her eyes rolled back in her head, and her endless shrieks ended. "Enervate," Mr. Weasley said. "Pretoria," Neville said again, and her right hand looked like a glove filled with small pebbles. "Pretoria," he said one last time. Her spinal cord was obliterated, and Bellatrix Lestrange died. Her eyes were wide and unseeing. Her mouth was open in a silent scream. Harry breathed deeply, as though he had just run for a very long time. Neville leaned his head up against the bars. "They really are stupid, aren't they?" he asked in a shaky voice. He looked as if he were about to be ill. Harry couldn't blame him. They should have known that the children of those they tortured and murdered would eventually come after them. "And their parents," Mr. Weasley said. "And their brothers," Bill said. "I want the Carrows," Harry said. "They tortured Ginny. There were 19 Death Eaters imprisoned in Azkaban, counting Bellatrix, and all of them died within the hour." Harry slashed Amicus Carrow from throat to groin and compressed his sister's lungs. Yaxley fell to a bludgeoning hex to the head. He was just recognizable enough. Mr. Weasley made quick work of the 4 Death Eaters that he killed. "Let's gather them together," Harry murmured. "How best to transport them, do you think?" "Transport them?" Mr. Weasley frowned. "Are we going to take them to Grimmauld Place?" "Of course not," Harry said. "We're going to drop the bodies over Malfoy Manor." Mr. Weasley sighed and looked away. He raised his wand and began to destroy the bars around the bodies. Harry watched Charlie kill Dolohov and wondered how many lives had just been saved by that act of what some might consider brutality. He also wondered how many murders had just been avenged. "There was a time when I never would have considered this," Mr. Weasley said quietly. "I know," Harry said. "I've never actually done anything like this either." "I wish Ron was here," he said. Harry thought he might know why Mr. Weasley wished that. Ron had, in fact, become increasingly hostile over the last few months. Ginny had as well, though she did not have minor outbursts at her parents with as much frequency. Conversely, Harry's bitterness had been fading. He looked at Mr. Weasley, tall and balding and avenging the murder of his son, and thought that today might have been the death of it. "Ron will come around," Harry said, though he did not sound convincing. He hoped that Ron came around. Both he and Ginny. Harry didn't want them to be bitter and resentful after he died. He wanted to think of them surrounded by their family. He knew that they would not celebrate the defeat of Voldemort, not since it meant his death, but he hoped that Ginny especially would not be mired in regret. "You could defend yourself, you know." How do I defend myself against a son and daughter who sacrificed everything to save my life? Mr. Weasley asked. Harry opened his mouth, about to say something though he hardly knew what to say, but was interrupted by the appearance of Neville, Charlie, and more bodies. We're going to drop them over Malfoy Manor for Voldemort to see, Mr. Weasley explained. Charlie looked pleased. Bill's almost done, he said. He's just finishing up Malfoy. He's drowning him with Aguamenti. I never thought of that use for the charm. Charlie's face was flushed, but his eyes no longer had the glassy look of rage. He was beginning to come off it. Harry felt a twinge in his stomach and realized that he was too. The rage that had protected him from the grief and loss was fading. He wanted to hold on to it because it felt like strength, and Ginny would need him to be strong. But even he knew that it was a false strength. Let's go, Harry said. He scrubbed his face with his hand. It came away bloody. He was covered in amicus caro blood. He ignored it. Harry bound 4 bodies together, lightened them, and levitated them out to where they had left their brooms. Grab your brooms and the bodies, he said. I'll apparate all of you to Wiltshire. That's where the Malfoys live. It took 6 trips, but Harry got the rest of them the closest he could to Malfoy Manor. It was protected by powerful wards and was invisible to Harry's eyes, but thanks to his knowledge of the future, he knew exactly where it was. They'll be able to get through the wards, he said. They've still got dark marks, even though they're dead. He mounted up and kicked off. The others followed closely behind him. He flew slowly, looking for familiar landmarks. There, he pointed. There was a shimmering section in the field below. He continued on until he was absolutely certain that they hovered directly over Voldemort's lair. Shield them so they don't go unrecognizable once they hit, he advised. And let's get back to Grimmauld Place as soon as we drop them. Wish we could see his reaction, Charlie said darkly. Maybe Snape will be there, Harry said, though he hoped Snape was already safe at Hogwarts. He had a feeling that Voldemort's rage would be terrible. He used his wand to cut the ropes that bound the bodies together, shielded them, and let them drop. The others were a split second behind him, and as soon as the bodies started to drop, Harry rolled his broom and disapparated. There was a split second of silence when the 5 of them had arrived in Creature's domain, and then Mrs. Weasley screamed, "Where have you been?" "They're back, everyone!" Footsteps thundered down the stairs, just as someone arrived by flew. "I still haven't seen them," Ron said. He stumbled when he saw Harry. "What the hell?" he said blankly. "What happened to you?" "All of you." Harry gaped at them. Did they not know that Percy was dead? He glanced down at his watch. Harry had known for less than 2 hours. Holy shit, is it still morning? And he supposed that it might not have been made public. He felt sick. Ginny appeared just then and threw herself into Harry's arms. "Ginny," he pulled away. "We got something to tell you." "Percy." "Oh shit," Ron said. "I was right. I told you." "Harry, listen," Ginny said. "Percy is dead," Mr. Weasley said heavily. "The Death Eaters got him this morning." "Molly, what did you do?" Mrs. Weasley covered her mouth with both hands. Harry thought this was an odd question, though Mrs. Weasley might be in shock. She might not believe that Percy was dead. He felt like he had lived several years since he had woken up. "We went to Azkaban and killed all the Death Eaters in there," Harry said grimly. Ron started to laugh. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Charlie hissed. "Percy was not killed," said Percy. Harry swayed on his feet, and Ginny caught him before he fell over. He could only stare at Percy in shock. The slightly messy red hair, the horn-rimmed glasses, and the tall frame were all Percy. The Polyjuice potion would not work with dead people, and if Percy was actually a Death Eater, he never would have made it into this house. Harry's eyes stung, and he suddenly could not stand up. He felt ill with relief, and he put his head on his arms. "Thank God," he said. Ginny stroked his back. Mr. Weasley, Bill, and Charlie stampeded Percy. Harry looked over and saw tears streaming unabashedly down Mr. Weasley's face. Charlie was white with shock, and Bill simply gaped at his brother. Harry pushed himself up to his feet, strode over to Percy, and hugged him. "So," Charlie said, "anyone want to tell us what the hell happened?" "Snape," Ron explained. He and some other Death Eater were ordered to drag Percy back with him. But Snape wouldn't do it. "Of course," Harry murmured. Snape wasn't with Rothfuss, Mr. Weasley said thickly. He kept reaching over to touch Percy, to grip his shoulder, or ruffle his hair. Had I known, Snape imperioused Rothfuss to grab Percy and bring him to the Hog's Head, Ron said. Harry took his glasses off and wiped them. He felt a great lump in his throat, and he was afraid that if he continued to look at the very much alive Percy, he would break down. I assume it was Rothfuss under the potion, then? Nope, Ron said. Snape thought of a way to kill two birds with one curse. Me and Sirius dragged out Draco Malfoy, the little bugger. You and Snape and Sirius collaborated on this? Harry asked in disbelief. Yeah, Ron said. He looked slightly uncomfortable, as if the notion surprised him as well. Why didn't you tell me? Harry said. Because we obliviated Rothfuss, Ron said unapologetically, and we knew you'd be unhappy with that. But Snape didn't have much time, and we couldn't think of a different solution. Scourgify, Ginny murmured, and Harry became marginally cleaner. If it's any consolation, Harry, I had no idea what was happening until half an hour ago, when we realized you, Dad Bill, Charlie, and Neville were missing. I thought you might have gone after Death Eaters, Ron said. But I have to admit that I didn't expect Azkaban. Did you leave Bellatrix alive? No, Neville said shortly. I crush her bones. Ron gaped at him, and then turned to Harry. What are we going to do? Rodolphus, Harry said. Ginny gripped his hand, and he realized that he was trembling from the aftermath of feeling rage and relief in equal measure. We should have thought of that before, but she's dead now. And Voldemort knows they are. We dropped the bodies over Malfoy Manor. We all lost control, Mr. Weasley said.
Howdy there, Potterheads. Welcome back to the page. We are continuing on with Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always, by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are with Chapter 38, Out of Control.
Chapter 38, Interlude, Tom Riddle. Chapter text. Lord Voldemort did not feel angry. He gazed down at the 4 Death Eaters who had so betrayed him to his enemy, the boy Harry Potter, and was not stirred to anger. It was unfortunate, perhaps, that these 4 now must die. The incompetent fools that had died in the attack on Diagon Alley were better off dead. Indeed, the survivor had not lived long. Voldemort had given him and his family to Fenrir Greyback. Unfortunately, these 4 had been some of the more skilled of his servants. But no matter. It was not difficult to find more wizards willing to do what it took to prevail over mudblood filth. The woman whimpered, and Greyback kicked her. She fell silent. You have betrayed Lord Voldemort, he said coldly. No, Hamish Wentworth shouted. It was a pity that he was about to die. He was in a key position in the Department of Magical Transportation. We didn't. Do not lie to the Dark Lord, Voldemort said. He did not bother with penetrating the traitor's mind. He raised his wand. Crucio! Wentworth screamed and writhed on the floor of the cellar in Malfoy Manor. The other 2 made harsh grunting sounds like animals. Perhaps they were mudbloods, and they had lied to him. He is lying, my lord, said Snape. Even my small skill at legilimency is enough to detect this. I know, Voldemort said curtly. The light that emanated from his wand cast strange shadows on the wall. He followed it with his gaze, remembering how close he had come to killing Severus Snape. But Potter had been stupid. He had let his anger get the best of him. As a result, Voldemort's best ally out of Azkaban yet lived. Potter was an inconvenience that pricked at Lord Voldemort's temper constantly. The boy was smarter than Voldemort had thought possible. He had successfully disabled some of his allies. Though Crabbe and Goyle had been very stupid, they had been the type of brainless muscle that Voldemort needed at times. He and his little friends had also killed over 20 of Voldemort's Death Eaters. In many ways, Potter was even more of an opponent than Albus Dumbledore. Potter was not afraid to kill. Hamish Wentworth stopped screaming so suddenly that Voldemort was almost taken aback. He gazed down at the body, idly wondering if the pain had killed the man. No, he was still alive, but his mind and sense had fled. He could tell by the glassiness of the eyes. This was Bellatrix's favorite method to rid herself of traitors and enemies. Harry Potter had fought her in the Department of Mysteries, and she was now in Azkaban. The fool, Albus Dumbledore, must die, Voldemort said. I regret ever giving Draco the task. The Ministry is almost mine, and Dumbledore must be dead before that happens. How is the boy progressing? Snape paused. He prefers to work alone, my lord. He wants the reward you give him to be his alone. Voldemort could understand this, though if the Malfoy boy failed, he would be forced to follow through on his threat and end the Malfoy family. If it is not done by the middle of January, he said, kill Dumbledore yourself. And Draco? An example will be made of him, Voldemort said. Bring him back to me once Dumbledore is dead. As you will, Snape said immediately. Once Dumbledore and Harry Potter were dead, the years of exile in Albania spent enduring a painful existence would be worth it. Lord Voldemort would have no opposition, none at all. It galled him to have to practice a clemency against a 16-year-old boy, but that was about to end. His Death Eaters in Azkaban would be out within the month, two at most. Then the world would be ready to be created in a more perfect image. Lord Voldemort pushed away the small doubt that had lingered since he had watched Potter blow up the prophecy before his eyes. The only man who knew the fullness of the prophecy was Dumbledore, and Potter, with his youthful angst and righteous anger, hated Albus Dumbledore nearly as much as Voldemort himself. The boy felt so betrayed, so misused. Tell me, Voldemort said. He pointed his wand at the unconscious woman. There was a flash of green light, and she was dead. Is Potter still isolating himself? Indeed, Snape said. He has his little friends, but he is maintaining his fury at the wizarding world for daring to believe he was a dark wizard. The Slytherins say that he is particularly vicious to his godfather, Sirius Black. He is a fool, Voldemort said. 2 more curses, and the 4 who had betrayed him to Potter were dead. He stared at his wand once the light had faded. He disliked the fact that his wand and Potter's had done something unusual in the graveyard. Not for the first time, he cursed the fact that Yaxley and the Carrows had acted so precipitously and killed Ollivander. The 2 wand makers he had questioned had had no idea what could have caused the joining of the 2 corps. I have thought so since his first day at Hogwarts, said Snape. He is rash, foolish, and has no idea how to use his brain. This can only be to our advantage. Voldemort turned and swept up the stairs. The prophecy and the wand would not stop him from ridding the world of Harry Potter. He had known for over a year Dumbledore was a fool for trusting Severus Snape, that he must be the one to kill Potter. In truth, he looked forward to it. He wanted to watch the boy's limp body fall to the ground. He wanted to see the fear, smell the sweat, and hear the begging. Narcissa Malfoy, pale, blonde, and nowhere near as useful as her sister, scuttled out of his way and fairly ran toward the kitchen. Still, not all could be as vicious as Bella, and Lucius had chosen a wife with the purest of blood. Have the rubbish cleared away from the cellar, Voldemort said. She halted so sharply it was as if she was a puppet, and he pulled her strings with his words. Why, yes, my lord, Narcissa said stiffly. I will. But her words were cut off, and a loud voice echoed in the room. Welcome to the first episode of Potter Watch. The voice boomed. It thundered against Voldemort's ears until it filled his head. Potter Watch? I told you we weren't calling it that, said Harry Potter. His voice was softer than the other, but not by much. Voldemort found himself rooted on the spot, completely surprised for the first time in years. I thought we were going to call it Tom Riddle is a Total Arsehole Watch. Too long. Deal with it. Harry, we voted. This was followed by a string of curses. Voldemort looked at Snape, then at Greyback. He ignored Narcissa. She was completely useless. Find the source of this, he said quietly. How dare he? He could not help but glance down at the hand with the missing fingers and felt a burning rage. They aren't here. They can't be. They'll have a means of projection. Find it. Destroy it. I'm sorry about that, said a female voice. Voldemort presumed it was either the Mudblood Granger or the Blood Traitor Weasley. We here at Potter Watch would like to thank you for listening. Even though you haven't got much of a choice, said the first voice. Ronald Weasley. He would die with his friend. See, we've been quiet for a long time about a lot of things, like Voldemort being back and murdering people, that we're a bit tired of it. Not even our families, said a different female voice. We haven't got a family, Ginny, said Weasley. We've been silent for so long, said the mudblood peevishly, that we've decided to force you lot to listen to us. Tom Riddle and his Death Eaters are responsible for murdering 11 people in the last week alone. 3 Muggle families in Brighton were victims of a supposed gas leak, but were actually killed by Death Eaters. Voldemort seethed. How dare the mudblood call him by his filthy common name? He would enjoy giving her to Greyback. Perhaps Bella would prime her, and Greyback could finish her. Not all of them, said Harry Potter. 3 children under the age of 9 were torn apart by Fenrir Greyback. Greyback is not a Death Eater. He is a werewolf, and therefore beneath Riddle. They can't have any nasty half-breeds or non-humans in the inner circle. I've always found it a bit funny that Riddle's dad was a Muggle. He obviously has father issues, Harry, said Weasley. Daddy probably didn't much like magic. Oh, well, we'll just add hypocrisy to his list of crimes. And they laughed. My lord, the sallow, ugly face of Greyback stared back at Voldemort from beside the door. Stan Shunpike, Cedrella Bulstrode, and Maxwell Harlow stood with him, and rage broke over him like lava. They had heard. Avada Kedavra, he shouted. Cedrella Bulstrode toppled to the floor. Maxwell Harlow also fell to his wrath, and Greyback and Shunpike sprinted out of the room, slamming the door behind them. The force of Voldemort's next curse split the door, and it crashed down onto the bodies. He paced the room. They dare laugh at me? They dare? Urge you to keep safe, said the Weasley girl. There is no way to know how many people are Death Eaters or supporters of Tom Riddle. Do not let yourself be coerced or jinxed into joining. Stay safe. And now, Tom, said Harry Potter, I speak directly to you. You are a dead man. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how hellish it gets. The world is going to be rid of you. I'm looking forward to the feast we have to celebrate, said Weasley. Until next time, said Harry Potter. It took Voldemort a moment to realize that the broadcast had ended. Nagini slithered in, drawn to his anger and his desire to kill. He glanced at the 2 dead bodies. You may eat them, Nagini, he said. Her presence had reminded him of the fact that Potter had no idea that it would be impossible for Lord Voldemort to be killed. No one knew of the Horcruxes, not Snape, not Bella, not Lucius. And as long as still one Horcrux remained, Lord Voldemort would not die. No one was stupid enough to risk entering the room that night. Lord Voldemort did not usually kill for revenge, and what he planned did not really constitute revenge either. The murders of Xenophilius Lovegood and Augusta Longbottom had broken the friendship between Potter and his other little friends. Snape had told him that Potter did not even acknowledge the existence of the other 2. It was clear that targeting the Weasley parents would not do. There was no love lost there. The youngest Weasleys would probably thank him for it. But Percy Weasley, he was the likeliest candidate. And even if it did not break the friendship, it would bring the known allies of Harry Potter down to 4. He swept out of the room and immediately came upon Snape and Rothfuss. You are to find Percy Weasley and bring him to me. Right now. My lord. Do it, Voldemort said. Disillusion yourself if you must, but I want someone competent. He had Rothfuss. He was intelligent, though young. He was barely 20, and he did not have Snape's skill. Go with him, Severus. But make sure he's the one to do it. You've proven yourself to me. He did not need to tell either of them that Rothfuss would die if he failed. Voldemort had a light repast while waiting for his 2 Death Eaters to return. It would be tricky, but Percy Weasley had been foolish enough to emerge from his hiding place weeks ago and resume his career at the Ministry of Magic. It was a pity, really, that Potter had so few allies that he allowed them to place themselves at such risk just to trace Voldemort's own people in the Ministry. It came as a pleasant surprise that they returned with an unconscious Weasley little more than an hour after they had left. Rothfuss looked immensely proud of himself. Severus Snape was as inscrutable as always. Of all of his servants, Voldemort often thought, Snape came the closest to Voldemort's own mentality. He was capable of cold precision and had exacting standards. He did not enjoy killing, but knew the necessity of the act. Perhaps I will give him Hogwarts. Innervate. Voldemort pointed his wand, and Percy Weasley's eyes flew open. He opened his mouth, but only croaked. Percy Weasley, Voldemort said softly. Ally of Harry Potter, blood traitor, and murderer of those pure bloods who would see the world a better place. Another croak was the only reply. He has cursed himself, said Snape. As soon as he saw Rothfuss, he took a potion and cursed himself. What kind of potion? Voldemort said sharply. Snape hesitated. I'm not certain, but I believe it was the Forget-for-Now potion. As you are no doubt aware, my lord, the use of this potion against oneself has damaging effects, and Weasley drank enough of a dosage for 3 men. He is 5 minutes before his mind is completely gone. Voldemort felt another flare-up of rage. This had obviously been a plan of Harry Potter's. The few allies that he had most likely been given orders to take this potion and use a curse that would ensure silence until it took full effect. Voldemort had to admit, albeit grudgingly, even inside his own head, that it was a sound plan. Percy Weasley had administered the potion to himself. Therefore, he could not use a trigger phrase to unlock his own memories, and he was completely without purpose. Except for one. Voldemort stared into the brown eyes, and knew that the mind behind it was still lucid. The boy was afraid, and began to struggle futilely against his bonds. He croaked again and shook his head back and forth. He grunted and yanked at the black cords that snaked around his body while Voldemort watched. Avada Kedavra! The light left the brown eyes, and Percy Weasley slumped over. He was dead.
Thank you for the support, Potterheads. Here we are with a new chapter of Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always, by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are with Chapter 39, Fight.
Chapter 39, Fight. Chapter text. The time that stretched between the middle of October to the Christmas holidays was fraught with tension. November passed with little fanfare, and the days slid on toward Christmas. The Death Eaters and Voldemort were quiet, and as the days passed, Harry's nerves tightened to the breaking point. Voldemort would not allow the deaths of his best Death Eaters go without revenge, and Harry knew that the next move would be worse. He almost wished that Voldemort was not now performing a clemency against him. He wouldn't mind having a warning. He was only grateful that the Muggleborns had been protected to the best of the abilities of the Order of the Phoenix. Mr. Potter, the ire in Professor Octavius' voice told Harry that this was not the first time that he had been called. I realize that it is the last day before the holidays, but I would appreciate it if you could pay attention. Harry forced himself to stop thinking about the Muggleborns and dragged his attention back to his Ancient Runes class. I'm sorry, Professor. He felt a moment of disorientation. How was it possible that he was still in class and that the entire world had not stopped because of the war with Voldemort? He wondered why the teachers and the parents and the students had not hunkered down and hidden away until the war ended. Professor Octavius harumphed. As I was saying, we're beginning study on the truly abstract principles. Prepare your minds over the holidays, as the next term will be quite taxing for all of you, except perhaps Miss Granger, of course. Hermione beamed, and Harry could not help but grin back at her. Daphne Greengrass, who sat far away from them as she had adopted her new role of pure blood enemy for her own safety, flashed them a bright smile. Thank you, Professor Octavius, she said. Ron nudged Harry, and they shared an exasperated and amused glance. Now each rune will evoke feelings, said the professor. We are not here to discuss these feelings, merely to study, and for this first time that you view them with the knowledge you have gained over the years, I am putting a silencing charm on each of you. Clear your minds, and allow the runes to speak to you and to your magic. Write your impressions of the shape. Try not to describe what they make you feel. Harry and Ron exchanged dubious glances. Allow the runes to speak to me? Harry thought. Sounds more like something in Professor Trelawney's class. Still, when Professor Octavius passed out 3 runes, each to all of them, he bent his head to the task. The first was Melkara, which Harry knew meant honor. He stared at it. It seemed to grow before his eyes until he felt slightly small. Not in a bad, insignificant way, but he remembered how it felt to stand on the beach at Shell Cottage and watch the waves. It felt similar to this, and he could see the crest of a wave in the shape. And yet he also saw a bit of Hogwarts in it. He could see it clearly in his mind's eye as it had been the very first time he had seen it. It made his heart beat rather quickly, and he glanced around at Ron and Hermione. They were both completely engrossed and did not notice his stare. He spent the next 10 minutes describing the rune for honor, and was not entirely successful at describing the height of Hogwarts, the power of the sea, or the other forces that, like honor, reminded him that he was just a man and subject to a man's foibles, without adding personal touches. Every curve and every line evokes something worth striving for, and yet cannot be completely attained. It imitates the essence of honor, that lofty goal that leaves me reaching for it and never quite grasping it fully. Harry was forced to scratch out line after line as his quill would get away from him every now and again. Once he was satisfied that his brief composition was as impersonal as he could make it, he pulled the second rune toward him. He smiled wryly when he saw that it was YTRY, which meant courage. It was even more difficult than honor, and he labored over it. A headache built up in his head, and sweat broke out over his brow. He kept his left hand on his wand, and it seemed to tingle. The rune's call to the magic, Harry thought. There was little time left in the class by the time Harry got to the third rune. Damn, he thought glumly as soon as he recognized it. Emotional pain. How could he not recognize this rune? He had seen it in his dreams, had been haunted by it since the end of his third year. He sighed, prepared himself for a very unpleasant few minutes. He resolved to finish this as quickly as possible, and glanced down at the inscription. His mouth fell open in shock. Alienate. Love. Not pain. Love. He did not even look at the rune, but stared at the etched word beneath it. His mind felt blank. He knew that he had just come across something important, something crucial, and yet he could not grasp his thoughts. They whirled and swirled in his head, and he could make neither head nor tail of them. Why had the rune for love been so painful for him? Harry. Hermione's voice startled him so badly that he nearly fell off his chair. Are you all right? Harry looked around. The other students were filing out. Daphne Greengrass disappeared out the door while he watched. Professor Octavius was gathering up papers and runes. I didn't finish, Professor, he said. Professor Octavius looked down. Ah, yes, he said kindly. This one is difficult for some. He did not add anything further. Which ones did you have? Ron asked as Harry gathered up his things. I had wisdom, temperance, and solidarity. The wisdom one looked a lot like Dumbledore. Hermione snorted. Considering the fact that it is theorized that the runes appear differently to different people, I'm not surprised. Ron grinned at her. I'm sure it would have shown the same thing to you. Hermione, he told her. Possibly everyone in this class would have seen Dumbledore, wouldn't they? Point taken, she admitted, and clasped his hand. I had knowledge. She slapped Ron in the stomach when he let out a bark of laughter, camaraderie, and innocence. I saw a book, of course, in knowledge, but also a chessboard and a hand for some reason. I never figured that out. I'll have to visit the library. Camaraderie. I saw all of us. She lowered her voice. You know, the Order of the Phoenix. I swear, I think I even saw Tonks' pink hair. What about innocence? Harry asked when she paused. He was surprised when her cheeks pinked. I saw a child, she said. My child. Hermione's face took on a luminosity that was almost painful for Harry to witness. Hermione and Ron. They would have children, he was certain of it. They'd have a house full, or just a few of freckled, red-haired children with big brains and lots of courage. They'd have Ron's sense of humor and Hermione's sense of justice, and Harry wouldn't be there for it. Let's go to dinner, he said abruptly. He shook his head sharply, unwilling to examine why the thought of his future nieces and nephews made his heart ache. Harry found it slightly ironic that the Christmas during this 6th year had the same frosty quality as the one last time, though for very different reasons. Everyone was crammed into Godric's Hollow for a great feast provided by Mrs. Weasley, and everything was nearly perfect, except nearly all the smiles on every Weasley's face was fake. He could not help but blame Ron and Ginny. He did not like doing so. He loved the both of them very much, and he felt very hypocritical. But he saw the way Mrs. Weasley tried too hard to gain their approval. He saw how none of the others would really meet their eyes. He'd gotten used to not having eye contact with the Weasleys, but seeing their shame made him feel guilty. I never should have shown them those memories in anger, Harry thought. The situation between himself and the Weasleys was cordial but distant. This was the best that he could hope for. But Ron and Ginny needed their family, and it was rapidly coming to the point when Harry would have to step in the way Sirius and Snape had done for him. Fortunately, or unfortunately, Harry was still not sure. The situation came to a head in a way that he did not anticipate. It was rather like getting something extremely unpleasant over quickly, he thought later that night as he got into bed. He hoped that the killing curse would be just as effective. It didn't hurt last time, he mused. It could have been a lot worse. He did not know whether he was thinking about the rather spectacular Weasley fight or getting hit with something that most people did not survive. It began with Ron, of course. Mrs. Weasley handed out lumpy packages to all of her children. Her hand shook when she came to Ron and Ginny, and Harry felt the tension in the room become so unbearable that he watched Sirius, Remus, and Tonks escape the sitting room. He thought longingly of joining them, but winced when he realized that the situation was about to explode. 9 Weasleys were between him and the door, and the chance had passed him by. Ron very slowly and carefully opened the package that contained the famous Weasley sweater. Considering the fact that Harry knew his best mate as well as he knew himself, this did not bode well. "Do not drag me into this," Harry thought at Ron. "Do not say a word about the fact that I don't have one." Ginny had not yet opened hers. It sat on her lap. Her hands were folded over it. This was, perhaps, even more ominous than Ron's deliberate actions. "Sweaters, Mum," Ron said very quietly. "Yes," Mrs. Weasley said. Her voice only trembled a little. Harry felt like covering his ears. Why did I leave my wand in the kitchen? For the first time since he had been living here, Harry wished that he did not feel quite so safe in this place. If he'd thought that Voldemort might come rushing in, he never would have set his wand down beside the mashed potatoes and come into the sitting room. Opening presents sounded like such a good idea, Harry thought glumly. And since he didn't have his wand, he couldn't make himself temporarily sightless and deaf. "Well," Ron said, "this is a step up from last year, isn't it?" "Indeed," Ginny murmured. Harry stayed quiet. They deserved the chance to air their grievances, but he had a feeling that they were going to hurt their family rather badly. He just wished that he'd run out of the room. His muscles actually tensed, and he was ready to spring forward. Ron leaned back in his chair, affecting a deliberately casual pose. Only Ron, Ginny, and Harry appeared to be breathing. "Last year," he said comfortably. "Remember how last year we were dark? And Harry was an evil maniac? We didn't get a sweater last year," Ginny said. The paper crinkled as she fisted her hands. "Our family obviously didn't trust us enough yet." "Ginny," Mr. Weasley said in a soft voice. Harry pressed his lips together. He wanted to intervene, but his wife was hurting. He saw the way the corner of her mouth trembled. She was hurting, had been hurting, and the anger came from the place inside of her who felt betrayed by her entire family except Ron. Perhaps they just needed to talk it out. "But now we're suddenly the golden children," Ron said in a hard voice. "We travel back in time. Are you going to throw that in our faces every chance you get?" Mrs. Weasley shouted. Harry blinked and realized that Mrs. Weasley's mouth trembled just like Ginny's. "How many times?" "I don't." She put her face in her hands and started to sob. "I don't know what else we can say. It's the single greatest regret of my life," Mr. Weasley said firmly. He was gazing at his hands. "And I speak for your mother as well. We were so blind. We were so worried for the two of you," Mrs. Weasley cried into her hands. "Yeah," Ron said. "Worried about Harry and how he was turning us dark. We told you over and over again that Harry wasn't dark or evil." "I know," Mr. Weasley said. Harry was glad to see that he was defending himself. "Don't you think we've thought about this? How many times, and in how many ways, did you tell us?" "Countless," Ginny said. "And don't mention Harry touching me. I told you then that I'd initiated it. It was a mistake we both made. I told you that." Harry put his head in his hands. He could tell by the tremor in Ginny's voice and the way Ron breathed slightly quicker than normal that they were well aware of the complexity of the situation. The Weasleys had not trusted. They had turned their backs, but they had come around with scant proof. They had offered to fight, and they had done everything they could to help ever since. And because they hadn't known about the time travel, it was almost impossible to blame them. But their actions had cut Ron, Ginny, and Harry to the bone. "And where's Harry's sweater?" Ron asked loudly. "Don't," Harry said quickly. "Leave me out of this." He turned to Mrs. Weasley. "Don't answer him." "Harry," Ginny said in a quiet voice. He shook his head. "I've made my peace," he said in her ear. Unfortunately, Ron was close enough to overhear. And just like that, Ron and Ginny immediately focused on him. Wrong choice of words. "Harry," he told himself. "What do you mean you've made your peace?" Ron asked in a low, dangerous voice. "Shut up, Ron," Harry said fiercely. He absolutely did not want to talk about the fact that he was slowly coming to realize that his death was coming. And Hermione, brilliant though she was not going to reach into another fairy tale and find a miracle for Harry. "Why don't you focus on cutting up your family some more?" "Are you defending them?" Ginny asked incredulously. Harry looked around. Mrs. Weasley was still crying. Mr. Weasley had his hand on her shoulder. The older Weasley brothers, even the twins, were solemn and shaken. Ron and Ginny were now standing, and their arms were folded across their chests, and their faces were alight with righteous anger and deep hurt. Harry understood both, but the looks on the Weasleys' faces broke his heart. Harry sighed. "Yeah, I am." Ron actually took a step backward. "It's worse for both of you," Harry said. "I admit that. You're hurting and feeling betrayed, and I agree with you. But," he gestured to the Weasleys, "look at them. I think," he took a deep breath, "I think that you've got to forgive them and stop punishing them, or stop seeing them. Bitterness is a choice, Ron." There was a long moment of stunned silence. "Harry's right, Ron," Hermione said softly. Ron's jaw worked. He looked furious, but his eyes were wet. "Where'd you get that idea?" he asked. "The bitterness is a choice bit." Harry's mouth twitched. "Snape told me." Ron was about to open his mouth, possibly to express his shock that Snape would say such a thing, when Mrs. Weasley spoke up. "I think," she whispered, "I think we ought to leave. It isn't working, is it? We did too much damage." "We're staying in the order," she said firmly. Harry watched as one by one, the Weasleys picked themselves up off the floor. "Don't let them leave," Harry urged silently. "We're not going to let you fight this out alone," Mrs. Weasley said. She bent and picked up the sweater she had made for her children. "But it was too much to expect. And you don't really need us anymore, do you?" "Don't need you anymore," Ron said. He sounded completely and utterly shocked. Ginny let out a burst of laughter that bordered on hysteria. She was very close to sobbing. Harry knew. "How can you possibly? We know what you've sacrificed for us." Mr. Weasley interrupted. "We know, and we're never." "Hold up." Ron held up his hand. "Traveling back in time wasn't a sacrifice at all. You're dead wrong about that. We lost everyone. Everyone except the three of us. Using the Tears of Merlin was the easiest decision to make. You don't regret it?" And just like that, Harry watched the rage and hurt begin to fade with alarming rapidity from Ron and Ginny's faces. He wanted to tell them that, of course, they didn't regret it. They regretted the necessity of it. But he did not feel comfortable speaking up in this moment that was so fraught with emotion. "Mom," Ginny whispered, "how can you ask that? It's a miracle that we're here. Do you know that sometimes I dream that we're still in that horrible future. And then I see you again, and even though I'm angry and hurt and everything, the first thing I think is how wonderful and amazing it is that we've been given a second chance." "Yeah," Ron said. "Me too." Harry closed his eyes briefly, feeling a small surge of guilt that a part of him still wished that he somehow could have brought his Weasleys back with him, and that he could have died for them. But that was an impossible desire, and he shoved the thought away as soon as it flitted across his mind. Ron nudged Harry. "I can't believe that Snape was right." Harry raised his eyebrows. "Oh, listen," Ron said. "Don't leave." But his family was frozen. They did not appear to be moving anywhere. He raked his hand through his bright red hair. what I'm trying to say. Honestly, Ronald, Hermione said. She sounded exasperated, but the look in her eyes was very tender and gentle. Harry looked away. You've got the emotional range of a teaspoon. Mum, Ginny said softly. She moved forward so that she stood in front of her mother and father. Dad, I've been a little selfish, I think. I know that I have had good reasons for being angry. But hearing that you think that we don't need you, it breaks my heart. Because we need you, even though we weren't there for you when you needed us. Mr. Weasley asked tentatively. There was a note of hope in his voice that caused a lump in Harry's throat. When we were blind and a little stupid? The thing is, Ron said. He seemed much shaken that his attitude had caused his parents to think that he didn't need them. You're here now, and, well, we know what it's like not to have you. So damn, of course we need you. Ginny threw herself in her mother's arms, just as Ron stepped forward to hug his father. Harry found himself grinning so widely that his cheeks actually hurt. The dissipation of the tension and the rising joy in the room was a palpable force. He threw his arm around Hermione and watched as his wife and Ron rejoined their family. His heart ached a little, and he felt a little lonely, but it added spice to the utter happiness that he felt in that moment. It was enough for him that Ginny and Ron were gifted with this. It really was. The most noticeably different members of the group were perhaps Fred and George. The moment after they had hugged their brother and sister, they'd retreated to a corner behind the Christmas tree and were plotting something exceedingly mischievous, judging by the looks on their faces. In light of the recent events, Fred boomed once Ron had pulled his sweater over his head. We've decided that we need to make a confession, George said. We need to come clean, Fred said. We're Merlin, they said together. Harry did not believe it for a moment. He could not say why exactly. They were smart enough, certainly, but it simply didn't fit the pieces of the puzzle. Not by a long shot. But what if they were playing a very deep game? He glanced around and saw a mixture of disbelief and uncertainty on everyone's faces. We used the Trojan horse method, Fred supplied in a stage whisper. Yeah, that. George winked at him. We used the Trojan horse method. We've been taking turns possessing each other. Yes, Fred smiled broadly. What you're thinking is actually true. Sometimes I am George, and he is Fred. We've gotten a bit confused ourselves, George said. What with two Georges running around? Two Freds, Fred said indignantly. Sometimes I'm the one who comes back. Harry snorted, and Ginny let out a little giggle. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but they were alight with laughter. Nearly all the doubt had faded. Of course the twins weren't Merlin, though they could just be burying the truth even further. But Harry still thought that he was the one to come back in time, but nothing was really set in stone. That is impossible, Hermione said. Then, doubtfully, isn't it? It isn't really the two of you. Fred and George just smiled slyly. How do you know it isn't? We don't know, Harry thought. I wonder if we'll ever find out.